All right, who's ready to have an adventure? Got my crimper roll back from being straightened. They put it up on 125 ton press, and he said it didn't really fight him at all. Went back out straight, so should be good there. Before I took it down there to get straightened, I had the new flights welded in, so now it's complete again. Hopefully that'll get it a little bit more in balance. I almost asked if they had a way to balance it, but I didn't want to push my luck, and it doesn't. I mean, it spins at a pretty good clip, but it's not super duper ungodly high speed. So, and having all this metal back on is gonna have it way more in balance than it did with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flights missing. So, because they were all basically, I don't know, 4 inches ish missing. So that's a fair bit of weight on basically one side of the roll. So hopefully that alone eliminates a fair bit of noise having it straight so they're not hitting, because technically when it's driving, these are supposed to keep the flight spaced out, and they're not even supposed to touch each other between here and the drive lugs down on the other end. They're not even supposed to touch each other. So, but before everything can go back together, that's where the adventure comes in. I went and got some post foam to try to get in there. It basically pours like water. You got 3 to 5 minutes before it starts setting. It actually, if you cut it, it shouldn't go too bad. I bought a sacrificial funnel that we're going to modify. Basically, I got to figure out how big of a hole I got to get in there and get this in. I called Sika, the company that makes it, and got some information. Obviously, it's a closed cell foam, because if you're setting post with it, you don't want it to draw moisture, so you don't want open cell foam. So it's closed cell foam, and a bag is supposed to make about 7/10 of a cubic foot. So I got 3 bags. The rolls are actually 2 different sizes. This one is, what did I measure it out at? I think one's 6 and one's 5.5, or one's 5 and one's 5.5. They're a 1/2 inch different. Yeah, that one's 5.5, this one's 5. At least, well, it's probably 6. Yeah, 6 OD and 5.5 OD, 1/4 inch wall. So I did the math, roughly guesstimating, because you don't know how wide the plug is in the end. I don't know if the shaft goes all the way through or if it's just stubs. But basically figuring on a hollow tube, and I left a little room for error. I think I used 76.5, and I think overall they're like 78, 79, somewhere in there. Basically, I figured this one is roughly 0.89 cubic feet, and this one is just over 1 cubic foot internal volume. So should basically take 1 bag to do this, and a little bit more than 1 bag. So basically what I'm gonna do is get my hole in it, get this one filled, see how it goes, let it set, and then go do this one. And because it's supposed to be set and done expanding within 5 minutes. So let this one expand all the way up, figure out if there needs to be any more in it, and then I could take, if need be, I can take the 3rd bag and top them both off, because this one's obviously going to need a little bit more, because it should come up fairly short. So, but first I want to drill a test hole to to figure out how thick this end cap is. Should be able to use a hole saw. And the end caps in these are actually identical. Basically, it looks like on this one, they just made an extra sleeve to slide in there to take up the difference, and that way they didn't have to make more than one end cap. So I guess we'll lay a hole out in this one and punch, or just run a pilot drill through there, figure out how thick that is, and then go from there as to whether or not we got to drill it or use a hole saw. If we got to drill it, I'm gonna have to figure out some way to get a mag base or something on there, because I'm not gonna be able to hand drill a hole big enough to pour what I need to pour in there. It looks like to be about a 1/4-inch plate, so I dare say a hole saw will go through there just fine. The big question will be, I might have to run home and get my DeWalt drill, because Dad's Milwaukee's about had it, and it's kind of halfway stuck in hammer mode, and it won't, well, I don't think it's hammer mode. I think it's stuck in I think that whatever mechanism they got in there to set it for like your screw torque setting, it's like half stuck in that, and sometimes when you got a load on it, it'll slip into torque setting. And the chuck's junk. 1.25-inch hole saw is about the biggest I can get in there without getting into the weld, which I don't want to do, so. Well, this just complicated things a little bit. It's a stub shaft, and I've got a second plate welded in about 5-ish, 6 inches in that the stub shaft goes to. So now I gotta get a hole through that plate. Interesting. Alright, I managed to get a second hole punched in it and stuffed a pipe through it, and from that point on it is clear until the second nugget down there, which if we don't get the ends, I mean that little bit right there, if it doesn't get filled up, it ain't. This is where the vast majority of the noise comes from. Unfortunately, the second hole I was able to put in it, I was only able to make it 1 inch because this this hole saw driver is bigger than 1.25 inches, and it won't go through the hole. And our small hole saw driver, the biggest hole saw that we have that'll fit it, is 1 inch. So that's what I had to use. And then we got this long driver that Dad made for working on cylinders. So at least I was able to get a hole in it. I modified my funnel and made it where I can get all the way through that second hole. That way we're not dribbling into this chamber here and filling it by accident. We want to make sure everything gets past that chamber. So did I mention this is going to be interesting? I mean, if they want you to cut it right there, and that's all the bigger the hole it comes out of, it's got to pour about like water if it's going to pour fast enough to do its thing, and it feels like water in there. So it's going to be interesting. That's why we're only doing one. That's why I only modified one at a time, because I may end up taking that roll back down to the place to straighten it and saying, hey, can you guys build me one of these, because this one's screwed up now. So let me get set up here. Got to get it hanging from the forklift out in the driveway, and we'll see what we can screw up here. Well, you guys just missed all the excitement. I'm getting set up to start pouring, and the nurse tank's sitting here because Dad needs it for a project this weekend, and I got it filling with water. And Teeter's with me, and next thing I know, she bolts over here barking her head off. Gotta be the dumbest woodchuck in the face of the planet. It had walked under here and let her see it, and it just stood there. And I was freaking out because I didn't want it to latch onto her, because a woodchuck can screw a dog up pretty bad if it starts biting them. And the closest thing I could find that had any weight to it was a plastic snow shovel. So we got it chased out from under there, and then it went under the forklift, and we got it out from under the forklift. It went under the 1600. And I finally got it shooed out from under the 1600, and Teeter had it pinned in the middle of the driveway, and I whacked it on the head with a shovel. And then she got a hold of it, and now we got a dead woodchuck, and I don't see any blood, so apparently it didn't hurt her. Did you get it? Are you all proud of it? That'll make 8 woodchucks that have died around here in like the last month and a half between her and Lily. Lily killed 2 of them on her own. Like full grown that size. Have no clue how she did it. They weren't there 1 minute, and then the next minute there was 2 dead ones laying there, and she was the only one outside. Teeter was with Mom. So that was the excitement. So now I gotta finish getting set up here, and we're gonna pour a little bit of foam and see if we can make this work. Oh, my only fear was that thing latching onto Teeter and making a hole that we had to get sewn up. Oh boy, that was interesting. Alright, well, after the woodchuck debacle, and then the guy showed up to drop the hose off, and then the guy showed up needing the hose made, got everybody taken care of. Now we're finally ready to do this. I figured it was easier to hang it from the forklift, and that way, just so I have enough room, I work out of the loader bucket. So it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully it works. As long as nothing starts expanding prematurely in that tube that I got going down in there, and everything makes it into, okay, where's the hole? And everything makes it into the cavity, I think we'll be good. So, we'll, where can I set you? I guess we can set you. Can I set you there? Yeah, that should work. I am freaking nervous. So it says to roll from the bottom to break the seal, mix for 15 seconds, cut it, and pour it. I might skimp on the 15 seconds. I might mix it a little and then pour it. My big fear is it starts setting up. I mean, there's really not a whole lot in there. It's that little bit and that little bit. So let's see how this goes. I got my scissors ready. Well, it went right in. That might not have been 15 seconds of mixing. The bag felt like it started to get stiff. I was like, oh crap. Surely it would have mixed a little bit pouring on the way in. I don't know why that made me swell. Not knowing how it thickened up once you started mixing it, because it felt plenty liquid in its two components, but I didn't know if it would start thickening up once you started mixing it and then it wouldn't pour down the funnel. I mean, there was all sorts of... Definitely gonna have to clean the funnel out before the next pour. Stuff in the bag starting to expand. It definitely gets warm. Yeah, I guess I'll let it sit for a minute and see if it works its way up. Well, it looks like, and I'm gonna let it sit for a minute and lose. That stuff gets super freaking sticky. So before I stick a tape measure in there and get the end all gobbed up, but it looks like it's somewhere in here. Maybe it looks like it might be. I'm sure I can't get the light. I'm sure I can't get it in all in one. But so it might need to pour just a little bit more in there. But it's in there. It expanded. And I don't know, it might actually still be expanding yet. That looks like it settled out. So I might have to pour just a little bit more in there. But we'll let this one hang and do its thing. And I'm gonna go get the other one prepped, get the holes put in it and whatnot. And then we'll get them both hanging. And then I can pour the other one, let it set up, and then with them both hanging right next to each other, hopefully I can and top them off. Well, I guess I went a little bit too much on the second pass, but it's good to know that this stuff stays fluid enough while it's curing that it can find its way out of a hole rather than building pressure. So that's good to know. But I'm gonna have a lot of scraping to do once this sets up. Whoopsie. Curious to see if the bag won't blow up either. What a mess. Ah well, once it sets, it scrapes right off real easy, so that's good.
All right, they're cleaned up pretty good for the most part. Holes are welded back shut. It was not fun welding them holes back shut. Fun fact, that foam burns pretty good. And every time you'd strike an arc, it'd light it on fire and it'd blow your weld back out at you. So this one I was able to do in one pass. This one I had to make a cleanup pass on part of it, but it ain't terrible, so it's not like it's structural. Well, I mean, it's somewhat structural, but for the most part, you just needed to plug the hole. So with that, they are ready to go back in, and I'm curious to see how much quieter, because I mean, we should have done a before and after. Where did I set the ball peen hammer? Should have done a before and after. All right. I hate it when that happens. Well, we'll just... But... now it's just kind of a dull... where before that thing would have been ringing like a gong. So I think it was definitely... we're gonna gain something. I'm curious to see how much it is. Alright, so I got to get the bearings on both sides of the roller, and then I actually drill pointed the roller where the set screws go. I actually did it when it was still assembled before I took it all apart, so that I knew that the roller was in the right spot. But need to get the bearings on both sides loose. That way I can spin everything and get the set screws lined up with the drill point marks. Other side. That one's for this side. And that guy. And I'm going to, because before I took it apart, I had it all together, obviously, and I had everything tightened back up because there was some stuff loose, and I Loctited the bolts because the bolts had been working loose, and now there's Loctite on the threads, and you want to work with clean threads. The nuts are clean, but the bolts aren't, so I'm going to go wire wheel these bolts. Okay, top roll's in loose. Before I tighten the bearings up, I want to get the bottom roll in and then put the spreader bar back in, just in case for some reason that casing either spread apart or closed together or whatever it did when I took it out. But get that back in, tightened up, and then tighten the bearings up. That way nothing's fighting anything. both rolls are in there loose. Spreader bar's back in, so we know that the housing isn't bowing or anything. The rolls are already quieter. There's nothing hitting anymore. So that's good. So next thing we gotta do is set the bearings. And to do that, we gotta take a set screw out. And get one in. And then you gotta get, hopefully, where you can see. We're gonna have to put this one in and we'll take the other one out. So you gotta get the hole where you can see through it. But the wrench will only fit when the bearing is up top, so and then you can use your wrench in the set screw to hold the bearing steady and spin the roller over until the drill point lines up, and the roller's actually got to sneak this way just a hair. And then now you got your drill bit mark lined up, and that helps. It lets you drive the set screw in further so you get more thread engagement. And it helps lock the bearing race to the shaft, and it doesn't allow the shaft to walk back and forth, so it locks you down good. And just because I had set screws coming loose, this time we're going to put it together with a little blue Loctite. Just so that any vibration, because it's still going to vibrate, because I'm not even 100% sure that they balance these things from the factory, because there's no weights or any sign. It's a piece of 1960s farm equipment. They probably went with the close enough is good enough philosophy and welded everything together as evenly as they could, the best they could, and sent her on out the door. All right, 3 more to go. Well, it's all back together. Everything's hooked up, everything's tight, so what do you say we spin her up and see if we made any difference, eh? and the knocking is probably just the drive lugs smacking that driven roller, which that'll smooth out once you get it into hay. So, but that's the smoothest and the quietest it's ran since I started running it. And the little bit of knocking it does do, that foam took the ringing, that resonant ringing out of it. Now it's just kind of a dull thud, so it doesn't hurt your ears anymore. I'm gonna call that a win. It definitely balanced out a lot better, because before it would sit there and almost hop the wheels off the ground when you were standing still. So, sweet. Now that can go home and go back in the barn. Just waiting on the 4150, or the radiator for the 4150, and then I can put that back together, because that's the only other outstanding project I've got going on that I got started in my time off of work here. That's coming to a close, start next Tuesday. I gotta say, that guy could definitely get used to just waking up every morning and doing his own thing and not having to worry about going into work, but unfortunately we're not in a position to carry on that trend for very long. Maybe one of these days. So anyhow, I'm gonna get this thing unhooked so it can go behind my pickup and get the nurse tank drug up, put out of the way until Dad needs it, and put everything away. And what do you think, Cedar? Think we'll see what else we can get into today? See if you can find any more woodchucks. So I guess with that being said, that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm ready to cut hay again.